Welcome to Brain Lady Speaks with Julie Anderson. Julie Brain Lady Anderson is considered to be one of the nation's top experts on the brain-personality connection. She has been inspiring her audiences to fire up their brains and ignite positive changes in their relationships. And now she is here to bring that knowledge to you. The information she shares will help those who hear it to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. When you learn to tap into the potential of your natural gifts and the power of the brain-mind connection, there is no limit to what you can accomplish. Today and every Wednesday on Brain Lady Speaks, you'll explore the latest findings to see how they have practical application in your life. And now, get ready to join Julie Anderson on the Brain Lady Speaks radio show. Take it away, Julie.
I am Julie Anderson, your host. And I am so excited about our conversation that we're going to have today with my wonderful guest, Helen Panos. Helen, thank you so much for being here on the Brain Lady Speaks show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me to join you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And the topic that we're discussing is so incredibly important and very timely. We are hearing so much about neurodivergency and the different brains, and it's a topic that needs to be talked about. So we're going to talk about it, how parents can help their neurodivergent children. And before we get into the bulk of the conversation here, let me read real quick for the audience your bio, so everybody kind of knows a little bit of your background. Helen Panos is an accomplished educator with over 25 years of experience in the public school system. She began her K-12 nationwide tutoring, SAT and ACT and parent advocacy business called Dynamics Learning 7 years ago to help children reach their potential. She listens to what parents need and matches them to the right type of tutor. This tutor helps them then customize a program that will motivate and move the child forward in their academics with ease. Tutors with Dynamis have various specialties and can tutor virtually nationwide or at the child's home in the metro Atlanta area. So once again, welcome, Helen, to the program.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but you being in the background that you have, having been in the education system for the last 25 years, have you noticed, I'm sure you probably have, but hasn't there been like a large increase in we have more and more neurodivergent children now than we did 25 years ago?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm seeing it quite a bit, especially since, got to use the word COVID. But I'm sure, I've seen it before that because I was a 504 chair as well in a public school system. So definitely. And I think it's just coming more to light now that, let's just say, parents were at home with their kids and they could see things maybe more clearly.
Right. And I think I'm going to mention a little bit on it when we get into the conversation on what I think might be contributing to this even growing even more. But before we really get into the depth of it, help our listeners to fully understand what neurodivergent means, because it kind of is this term that can apply to a lot of different things than just simply different learning styles or being different in the way you view things. So what does it mean? And then we'll talk about what parents can look for.
It really has a lot to do with, it's going to be a medical diagnosis, usually under a Section 504 plan. But there's a lot of different ones, like you said, and it's just the way the brain reacts and processes things. I'll leave it general like that. And so a lot of the most common I always saw and still see, even in my company today, and I saw in public school, is ADHD being very popular. You're seeing a lot of dyslexia nowadays. I was seeing that a lot as a 504 chair, and anxiety. Now add anxiety to that, a lot of mental health issues going on too today. And I'd say autism. Autism is becoming very big as well. Yeah. So it's the way the brain processes information that's different from a normal brain, let's say.
Right.
And that can show up differently in different people.
Absolutely. Differently in different people and differently depending on what that category that they might fall into. So you might see it present itself one way in someone who is on the spectrum
Mm-hmm.
versus someone who is now suffering from anxiety disorders that are very induced or created or have come to the surface based on, like you said, what's happened over the last 5 years. And I might throw in there that I think these are a huge,
Oh, yeah.
a, a huge thing that's
Contributor.
contributor, because it's really contributing to all of us becoming more and more in that ADD type of a category, where it's because we've literally trained our brains to have a short attention span and to need information very quickly based on the things that we're doing. So we need to restructure the way we live our lives. But anyways, that's another topic. So when you talk about these different the different categories or the different things that you see, what can a parent look for? You mentioned that as parents were home with their children more during the lockdown, they were beginning to see things. What are some of the common signs that a parent might notice in their child that might make them think, maybe my child's a little bit on this neurodivergent side?
Hmm. So there's a lot there too, but I'd say some of the more common things are, number one, the obvious, maybe scores are dropping. You see your child not getting their work done, even though you're like, oh, and they could be intelligent, right? So I could tell a story about a gifted kid that I've seen. He's definitely neurodivergent. Autism kids are very intelligent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you start to see them not getting things done in a timely manner, kind of just having difficulty with completing assignments, tests. Maybe you start getting emails from teachers that say they couldn't finish this test. I'm going to give it to them again, this afternoon. They're going to have to stay after school to get it done because you can't really take a test the next day. Then that gives them the opportunity to go look answers up, right?
Right.
I'm seeing a lot of executive functioning as well. So I like to describe that as a person, like an administrative assistant that's just totally disorganized. So a disorganizational type of thing you may see. Reading, math is usually a lot of where it kind of shows up. They're just having difficulty getting that stuff done, taking too much time to do things, staying up too late. There's just all kinds of, test scores are very big. And since most schools are now doing a variety of tests, not just one major test at the end of the year, you have the opportunity to kind of pay attention to that, right? If you're not seeing improvement over time, then that's good, because at least parents kind of get a little bit of let me pay a little closer attention to this.
Yeah.
So writing is showing up in writing, a lot in
Oh, yeah.
writing as well. So I'd say test scores are going to be the obvious thing. Teachers, I always say we like to keep in contact with the teacher on behalf of the parent and the student. So we'll ask you to connect us with your teacher so we can ask all the questions that you may not be able to ask or not know to ask.
Exactly. Yeah. I would probably add in there too that if you really notice a high frustration level in your child, right? Things that
That's true.
perhaps, yeah, perhaps they used to enjoy doing certain things, and yet now that to have to sit down and do that piece of homework or work on that, they become very frustrated, or frustrated in just doing things in general because they're frustrated at what's going on in school. It's going to bleed over into the home life and into the way that they're interacting at
Hmm.
homes. So I think
Yes.
an unusual level, like some kids always just get frustrated as they're learning new things, period. But if it's heightened, or it has that agitation or anger piece to it, that I
Hmm.
think is also a clue that the parents might think, maybe we should look at things. Now, you mentioned that you've noticed it increase in it over the last few years, but how have you seen this increase in families in among your tutoring business and the schools, even the schools there locally that you interact with there in the Atlanta area?
I would say, well, also on an advisory council for Spectrum, which is the autism support group here in Atlanta. And so, I mean, we're seeing more of that. They're just not able to, they may be very intelligent, in terms of the way they verbally talk to you, let's say, but maybe not in terms of, putting things down on paper or on a computer. So we're seeing that. We're just seeing a lot of, we just helped a young man who just constantly needs a lot of help. I'm pretty sure it's an executive functioning issue. They said to her, and this is a lot of wrong information is being given out. At one point, they said to the parent, I guess, oh, he was ADHD. I asked her, is he ADHD? And she said, yes. And I will ask. A lot of teachers aren't going to point blank ask any parent that question, right? They're just going to, kind of beat around the bush. They may give you a hint as a parent, but they're concerned about legality, right? So,
Right.
but I will ask a parent because I'll ask them to share a psychological with me or anything they have that may be going on at the school. So we're kind of like working as a village together to solve the problem and or at least reduce as many obstacles that are in the way. So I'd say, yeah, I mean, this young man was having issues in geometry, and so he's definitely got to have a tutor. He's not getting a lot of assistance, which he really needs closer to one-on-one, I'd say. He's not producing at school, but he does it when he's one-on-one with a tutor. But I think he's a slow starter. He may not get it done. That all kind of hints to ADHD. But they did tell her that he no longer had ADHD. Well, that's not true because once you have ADHD, you always have ADHD. So I'm not exactly sure who told her that. But this is an example of things. I mean, I could go on and on about things I'm hearing and seeing, even with gifted kids. It's not just, people might think this is only for special ed children or kids that have just 504, whatever. It's everybody. It could be high level children also.
Yeah.
That are exempt. Like I have one that I'm tutoring myself who's a now rising third grader, and he's got sensory issues, sensory processing issues. So I know when to kind of back off if I see him getting a little agitated. He also takes medication. And so I know a lot of parents are having a struggle with whether they should medicate a kid or not, right? And I can understand that. That's very difficult, but I've also seen where a child just can't get anything done. I don't care how intelligent they are, that they're going to need some assistance somehow, some way. And I'm not a big lover of any drug, and this is not really a show for drugs, but talking about prescription drugs, but something to look at. And I know a lot of parents look at other means like the holistic route and see if that can help. But I mean, we're definitely seeing it a lot. We're getting more and more involved in pulling in the classroom teacher because I feel like they listen more when they know we're educators and they know kind of, they must know. They know the inside system, right? So they operate us a little differently, I think, from a parent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And I might just add in there about I agree with you on the medication side. My background is where I started like 30 years ago was in the field of natural health. So I do have this tendency to always want to go in that natural route if at all possible. But throughout all of my brain training and all of the education that I've gained on the brain and psychology and neurosciences, when there is a misfire, when there is a chemical imbalance, because sometimes it's chemical anxieties or chemical imbalance, right?
Mhm.
When that imbalance is there or the wiring, those connections aren't there, at times that is the best route.
Mhm.
And I agree. I like for people to explore the potential of doing things naturally or being more creative in physical movement because the brain loves physical movement and learning, and we tend to get away from that and we look at a textbook. Sometimes just physical movement will help a lot, but at times it comes down to that when you've tried the other avenues. So
Mhm.
I think we need to remove some of that stigma. I think what helped me a lot at one point in time in my life dealing with a close relative who needed to be on anti-anxiety medications is the person giving me counsel was like, if you had diabetes, you would be on diabetic medicine, right? If it
Mhm.
was if it was to the point where you couldn't control it through diet, you would have to
Right.
take insulin, or
Yep.
you would wind up dying early or having
And,
losing limbs or whatever.
and like
And
my doctors always say, there's just some things you can't beat. That's called genes.
exactly. Exactly, right? So keep an open mind on that. You know, definitely there are tactics that you can do that are alternative, but at the end of the day, sometimes it does in certain cases come down to a medication that will balance out chemistry in the brain.
Mhm.
So important to
Mhm.
think of. So how have your tutors then been able to help support families with neurodivergent children? How does having a tutor, because I have to tell you, when I full disclosure, I homeschooled my kids for 16 years, 17 years, something like that. And I lose track. They're all in their 30s now, but for many years. And I have to admit that I was almost like, I don't want to get a tutor for my sons. I'm smart. I can do all of this. And at one point, when my sons hit high school algebra, it was like I could do it, but I couldn't teach it. And they were so, the relief that they had not having to have that struggle with their mother was amazing. Like they could go in once a week, twice a week, meet with the tutor at the library, and they got it. So
Mhm.
what do your tutors, and what have you seen your tutors be able to help to support these families?
Well, first, I want to say that's an interesting comment you made, because a lot of times I get calls where the parent says, I know I can do this math or whatever, but he's not going to listen to me. And it's true. And then they're like, you do it. Because
Yep.
and they do listen
Yeah.
to a total stranger.
Yeah, exactly, right? And you don't wanna raise the anxiety level in the household. Like, I always tell my
No,
kids, "This is our house. This is our home. It will not be a battleground," right? We will
right.
not have. Yeah. So
So,
anyways.
so yeah, first of all, I have a lot of like specialty type people. I have a reading specialist. I have, special ed, gifted certification like I am. So that helps as well, because now we understand what programs they're in as well and what's required, because a lot of those are required by law, and there's things they should follow along with. So I would say yes. There's my tutors assist quite a bit, and we all, because there's 20 of us or up to 20 of us, so we collaborate together. So if I don't know an answer or my tutor doesn't, they know to message me and talk to me about it, and then I might reach out to somebody else. And I do that a lot. Plus we have meetings. So, and then I might even connect a tutor with one of my other tutors, so they can have the discussion about what else can they try, strategies or tips, anything like that that can help, assist the child. And, we'll jump into 504 meetings, RTI, IEP meetings, and help out that way as well. So that we're listening, and there's another pair of ears that understands the law and understands what you can get as a parent, because of your child being neurodivergent.
Oh, I love that, because I think it becomes so overwhelming oftentimes to the parents in this type of a situation, especially in the beginning of finding out what this whole neurodivergent world is about. And if the parent becomes too anxious, right, that just creates more anxiety for the child,
Hmm.
right? And then as the brain lady, you get into all those negative emotional spaces, and that's so bad across the board. Now the child can't pay attention, even worse than their baseline, because of all of the anxiety and the tension. So I love the fact that you are able to come in and advocate for the families and kind of be that outside voice that has more knowledge on the legalities and what's available and what shouldn't be said or shouldn't be done. So
Yeah,
that's a
because if you think about it, if you go get a psychological, so the psychologist has already seen your child, and y'all have done interviews or whatever, and then they write it up. Then they just hand it to you, right? And then
right,
you take it back to the school. So now what? I mean, they're
right.
not in a meeting with you. You really do need an advocate. And I also, if it's too into IEPs, I have somebody else I resource that out to, that also was an IST and IE, a special ed teacher. So she has her own company. So we work together a lot. So I have a lot of resources as well because I have 25 years experience as an educator. So I understand a lot what's going on, and all my teachers keep me in tune with what's going on.
Yeah.
And I hear from a lot of parents too.
Yeah. So for the listeners or the watchers, if you could explain or just real quick, define the IEP and what those acronyms are, or those letters are that you're using, because
Okay.
we might have listeners going, oh, maybe my child's neurodivergent, but what did she say?
Yeah. So usually, and I have blogs on this, so they can go to my website and see blogs
Perfect.
related to RTI, SST. Those are all like supports that they first begin with, and some states may call them slightly different. So you may be hearing this interview in another state, and I'm in Georgia, but they're all the same thing. They have to go through some type of a support where teachers are usually gathering data at first to see what is going on, if there really is a problem. And then, so that here in Georgia is called SST RTI. That's a response to intervention. And then there's 3 tiers to response to intervention. And all those tiers, they're doing 3 different things. And then if you hit the very top tier, you may be then eligible for special ed, which is where you get an individualized educational plan. And that's very strictly followed by law. The 504 plan is, and I have a video on the differences between 504 and IEPs, and you can get that through my YouTube channel. But the website, yes, is www.dynamislearningacademy.com. And so we have, things in there. Also, a lot of blogs on the whole tiered system, 504 IEPs, but IEPs will get you modifications, and you may have an assistant, and might get pulled out. Depends on how the county and the school system approaches that IEP in their system and in their state. And they'll get more individualized attention if it's severe enough. 504 plans are under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's called the Section 504 plan, where you can get accommodations. And a lot of this is usually a 504 plan, but you have to have a medical diagnosis from a doctor first, right? Like a pediatrician or a psychologist or whatever. So those usually until extended time, small group testing, sit in the front of the room. There's a lot of things, and you can even Google that. But definitely, I'd say yes. There's a lot that parents need to know about, and the higher up in that level that you go, the 504, the IEP, is more legalities involved in it. And then you as a parent should know what your rights are. They give it to you, but it's better that you get informed ahead of time, because you got to know that once you start that process, or they need to get it done in 90 days. So there's a lot of time limits on the IEP as well for them to get that done. Good. And really the 504 plan too.
Yeah. So those are things that you, as the advocates, when you tutor, these are things that you can help the parents understand all that small print, so to speak.
Yes. And again, it's pretty detailed, but you can Google it. But the 504 plans, and it really just depends on what your diagnosis is on, and the need has to be shown what the accommodations are going to be. And then those accommodations go on into taking SAT, ACT, and you got to know you have to apply for those to the college board ahead of time to get those accommodations. So there's a lot to kind of be aware of for parents.
Yeah, a lot out there. It gets very complicated when it gets into the, for lack of the red tape.
Yes. The government red tape. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, what are some of the tips that you can share with parents who are dealing with either a new diagnosis of their child being neurodivergent, or they've known it for a while and they're kind of at that point where they're like, I just don't know what to do? What are some of the tips of things that they can do to support that child and reduce that anxiety at home and keep home a safe place?
Yeah, I would follow people on a podcast where like this, like we're talking. I also have my own podcast, Smart Parents, Successful Students Podcast. It's on Spotify and some other places as well. And I have different guests. They're not all about neurodivergent stuff, but again, I would look that up and start just, I think your best bet for parents is to arm themselves with a lot of knowledge ahead of time and start reading from even when your children are 5.
Mhm.
I just referred a child that was 4 to my outside resource that I was talking about a few minutes ago for because they weren't being treated correctly through the IEP.
Mhm.
So that's something you really need to arm yourself with earlier on and not wait till things show up and then it kind of continues to multiply and get much more difficult for a
Yeah.
parent. And then now you're like, where do I turn? A lot of
Mhm.
outside resources out there. Psychology Today is terrific. Um, Heather Wright Consulting is who I'm kind of talking about, is who is my kind of go-to person. So she, Wright is Wright. But there's a lot of different psychologists. Your pediatrician should be your number one person to talk to immediately, I would say. And
Yeah.
then definitely the teachers to see what is it they're seeing. And then a lot of times they're given like a form to complete with a bunch of questions and they fill that out. And then you can take that to, and then the pediatrician will ask for that. So it goes straight to the pediatrician, usually in sealed envelopes. And then they use that plus talking to you and other people. And then they kind of gather, through an evaluation on whether your child might be ADHD or something else. And then
Yeah,
and then
that's
they'll refer you as well.
right. Right. And I would echo the earlier the better. There's such a beautiful, the brain is just so beautiful, and there's so many stages of development where the brain is primed for new neural connections, where the brain is it's just ready to grow, and it is hungry for growth. And it's no different in a neurodivergent child. That growth period is still there, that desire is still there. They're just not necessarily able to learn in what we would call that traditional setting, but their brain is still beautiful and in that spot where it needs that food, that knowledge and that extra stuff. So the more that you can do that at the earlier stage, the better the brains can develop, and
Mhm.
the better the self-confidence of the child too. Then you get into that psychology piece, right, where the getting that child to feel fine with this label that's been slapped on them, right?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. And no, and we've talked about a lot of the resources, and we're going to wrap up this conversation now. It's such a powerful conversation. Again, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today, Helen. I think that it's very valuable for a lot of different people, and just opening up the conversation and demystifying the conversation and desensitizing, right? So
Mhm.
that it's not a, oh, whisper, oh, my child
Right.
is
And
right.
hopefully, I think that used to be how it was for sure.
Yeah.
Because my niece is a neurodivergent person, and back then in the day, you're right. I think people thought, oh, there's something wrong with these people if they're like this or whatever. But
Yes.
I can assure you, there's a lot of this going on, and you are not the only person out there, parents that are probably experiencing it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to let everybody know, keep looking, keep talking to people like myself and Julie and other people. If we don't have the answer, we will help you get the right person and the answer.
And that's
You're
a
not in this alone. That's what I want to
right.
say.
Perfect. And that's a perfect segue, because you have an advocacy brochure
Yes.
that can be downloaded. And so we're going to pop up that link on the screen. And then for those who are listening to this in your mobile office or as a podcast, not at watching the video here, you can go to the podcast description, the show description, or on the YouTube description, and all of the ways to get in touch with Helen will be on that, as well as how you can pick up that brochure. And as she mentioned, she has a podcast. So follow Helen on the podcast. Her YouTube channel, again, Smart Parents, Successful Students is her podcast. And the YouTube channel is a lot of numbers. We got to get Helen to a lot of numbers and letters. We got to get Helen to put that at sign on there so it'll be easier. So it'll be at Helen
Yes.
Panos. We'll work with that. You can follow her. Dynamis Learning Academy on LinkedIn is also another way to stay connected. It's the same on Facebook and Instagram. So lots of different ways to connect with Helen. And if you have questions, you can send her an email and be able to stay in touch with her that way, or give her a call. So once again, Helen, thank you so very much for being a guest on the Brain Lady Speaks podcast today and sharing this, discussing this very timely topic with us.
Well, thank you for having me again. I appreciate it. And yes, this is a very important topic. Again, want to encourage parents to reach out to people that have some information about it, and don't give up. There's a lot of support and resources out there, and within the school system. And you may get blocked, but you need to keep pushing and nicely and get what you need for your child.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. I echo that. All right. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. We are honored and that you took the time to spend with us this morning or this afternoon, whenever you are watching this, wherever you are at in the world, because we have many listeners internationally. So we appreciate you and we value you. Because this is such a timely topic, we would love a little bit of social media love. Give us some thumbs up, give us a positive comment or review on any of the channels that you are watching this on, and share us. Share the link for this particular show. If it's something that you felt was very valuable, share it out there on the social media. You can follow me on social media as Brain Lady Julie, pretty much everywhere. LinkedIn, Instagram. I even started a thread channel. So all over the place. You can find me at either Brain Lady Julie or Brain Lady Speaker is how you're going to be able to locate me. I think I'm just at Brain Lady on Twitter. So we'd love to have you stay connected. If you like this topic and you would love for me to do something more along this line, or you have someone else that you would like to interview, or you yourself have a topic that you would like to have be interviewed on, shoot us an email at info@brainladyspeaker. It's brainladyspeaker.com. And we'll see what we'll have a chat, and we'll see if it's a good fit of a topic or a guest. Maybe you've read a book based on this subject, because I'm working more and more in corporates. When I'm working with corporates, I'm working with that neurodivergent category. So I'm reading a lot of books and white papers and studies that have been done. So if you find something interesting, I'm always open to growing. A little brain tip: reading is one of the best ways to keep your brain young. So get out there and do it. Read more, expand your knowledge more. That's a wonderful way to do that. We thank you, everyone, for following us. We do have a pet project of ours with our women entrepreneurs, called a collaborative book called Women Excelling Everywhere. If that's something that you would be interested in being a part of, or in finding new information about, we are looking for co-authors to join me in this project. If you want more information, you can scan the QR code here on the screen, or you can shoot us an email and we will connect you as that. If you're a little curious about what your brain personality connection is and the neuroscience of what makes you tick, then you might want to go to brainpersonalityassessment.com or scan the QR code and take the assessment. You might be really surprised in the eye-opening information that you find there. It is not just a personality assessment. We also rate your emotional tone, which gets into your health and your physical well-being and your mindset. So there's a lot of information included in there. So we encourage you to take that. All right. For that, we will wrap up the show. Once again, thank you, Helen, and everyone who is listening and watching. And I want everyone to take a nice deep breath. Go out there and simply enjoy every moment.